Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I admit that it has been a difficult year, not only for Lori, my wife, but for all of us. I worked for Wang Screw and Nut for 16 years. We made fasteners to order for manufacturers. When a company creates a product, they can't just go to a local hardware store to buy screws. Everything has to be done according to their specifications. I started in the sales department and worked my way up to sales manager. It was a great job, and the pay was very good. If I had fulfilled all 4 of my quarterly quotas, which I have always done, my bonus at the end of the year would have exceeded $100,000. Of course, with so many manufacturers going abroad, we had to fight to maintain our market share. But I created a good, hard-working sales team, and we always managed to achieve more than last year. A little over a year ago, all the big shots of the company, including me, were called to an unscheduled meeting. We were all very shocked to learn that the owner of the company was retiring and was secretly negotiating with a California conglomerate to buy the company. We were sold. A new CEO was introduced, and we were all promised that our jobs would be safe and nothing would change as far as management was concerned. It turned out to be a lie. Within 2 months, heads started rolling. I saw the handwriting on the wall and started looking for a new job, but my time came before I found anything. Patting me on the back and holding a $10,000 severance package in their hand, they led me right out the door. At first, Lori and I weren't too worried, but after a few months, I began to understand how the economy had changed over the years when I had my warm job. Not only did most of the production go abroad, but a number of domestic firms that remained bought their fasteners from abroad. I wondered how we stayed so strong, but it was no longer my concern. I needed to find a job. At that time, Lance, our 17-year-old son, was finishing high school. I had mixed emotions when he announced that he was joining the Army right after graduation. Given everything that was going on in the Middle East, I was afraid for his safety, and of course, we will both miss him terribly. On the other hand, I was glad that we didn't have to pay for college, because, to be honest, we just didn't have the money. About 5 months after I was laid off, it became clear that finding another job for $100,000 would not be easy, so I started setting my goals a little lower. To fill what I was sure was a temporary financial gap, Lori started looking for something too. In fact, she found a job before me. She was hired as a low-level secretary at a software development company. They didn't pay much, but it was still more than my unemployment check. A month after Lori started working, I took up a sales position at the Enright Initiative. They made car parts after the sale. For the first couple of months, I received a nominal salary during training. After that, I was given a salary plus commission. It will never be a high-paying job. One guy worked for them for 12 years and was the highest-paid salesman there. He earned only $60,000 a year. You can imagine the burden on our budget. We are used to all the financial attributes of a wealthy family. We lived in a nice house with a solid mortgage and had 2 Cadillacs, only one of which was paid for. It was mine. It was a 5-year STS. Lori drove the same model, but we bought it just a few months before I was fired. We also had several credit cards, most of which had already been exhausted. Lori and I also missed our evenings in the city. This was another advantage. After all, if you can't enjoy life, what's the point of having money? We went out all the time. We had dinner with friends, sometimes danced, sometimes had a show, a play, or maybe a concert. It wasn't like a normal date at all. We just raised our heels when we felt like it. This usually happened 2 or 3 times a month, and sometimes more often. Unfortunately, this was one of the first things that suffered when we had to start scaling down. It seemed to be harder for Lori than it was for me. As a child, her family had more money than me. I didn't start having fun until I started college, but my wife had fun with her dad and mom all the time. It was practically second nature to her. We hadn't left the house for months, and Lori started complaining. From her point of view, the bills could wait. It first started about 3 months ago. "Skylar, we have to do something. I'm going crazy sitting at home night and night and doing nothing. I want to go outside like I used to. I want to have some fun." Lori always had a bad time. I was sitting at the kitchen table and going through our bills. Slowly, very slowly, we were just beginning to climb out of the hole. I looked at my beautiful wife. "Sure, no problem," I replied sarcastically. "Just tell me which of these bills not to pay." She just stared at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to scream, but no matter what she thought, she kept to herself. As soon as I said what I said, I felt sick. Actually, it wasn't such a terrible request. I'm sorry, dear. I apologized. I promise it won't always be like this. I'm not stopping looking for a better job, but for now we just need to cool off a bit. Cool down? She growled. Skylar, we've been cooling it for almost a year now. I feel like a caged animal. I need to go out and have some fun. I know, honey, I know, I said, trying to calm her down. Look, we have a lot of catching up to do. 5 months ago, we missed the payment for the house and our second payment for the car. We came so close, I said, holding my thumb and forefinger about an inch apart, to getting your car back. We will be fine with the commission check for this month, except for one payment for the car. If we can lower the grocery bill, then we'll get everything fixed in 2 months. I saw Lori's lips tighten. She wasn't a happy tourist, and I really couldn't blame her. And then I had what I thought was a great idea. I'll tell you what, why don't you and I go to the Lincoln Park Zoo this weekend? It's free, and we haven't been there since Lance was little. Skylar, I don't want to communicate with nature. I want to communicate with nightlife, she chuckled. I want to eat, drink, and dance until my legs fall off. Darling, please be patient a little longer. I promise, once we get all the bills sorted out, we'll celebrate by going somewhere nice for dinner. Without saying another word, she turned and went upstairs. I must have sighed a little to myself. I really felt bad, but it was Chicago. Between parking and dinner for two, a night at a restaurant cost a couple $100 or more. I grew up in a family that believed that bills came first. There was no way I could justify spending that kind of money when we were still behind and barely paying the minimum payment on our credit cards every month. It took me another 10 minutes to finish. I was going to watch the news, but I realized that Lori was still upstairs, so I decided to check on her first. When I entered our bedroom, she was sitting on the edge of the bed and crying. I really felt like a jerk. I sat down next to her, hugged her, and hugged her tightly. I'm sorry, baby. I'm doing my best, I said, pressing my cheek against the top of her head. I know, she sniffed. It's been such a hard year, and now that Lance is gone, we could go somewhere for the weekend. We should have taken a little mini vacation, but instead we're stuck here. It's almost like being in prison. I thought the debtor's prison was abolished, she chuckled. It's a pity she was looking down when she said that. If she had been paying attention, I'm sure she would have seen the anger on my face. Our house was not a prison. Hell, I didn't even want to buy it. I thought it was too big and too expensive, but as soon as she saw it, she just had to get it. Now I'm fighting hard to keep it, and she calls it a prison. I had a choice. I could either open my mouth and tell her what I thought of her analogy, or leave. I chose the latter. Over the next 2 months, the relationship between Lori and me got even worse. The conversations seemed to be getting shorter and less meaningful. We spent less and less time in the same room with each other. Lovemaking became less frequent, and Lori's involvement decreased. Her cries of passion turned into sobs, and the magic disappeared from the bedroom. She made no secret that she was unhappy that I hadn't asked her out, but I couldn't help myself. Yes, we both needed to be released, I agreed with her, but not before we at least paid the bills. I promised her to spend the night in the city in the near future, but that didn't seem to calm her down. It all came to mind on Friday after work. I returned home in an exceptionally good mood. I just got a good contract, and with the commission I will receive at the end of the month, I will finally be able to have a good time with my beautiful wife. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to tell her about it. When I entered, she was coming down the stairs, dressed up as if for a parade. Wow, I said, watching her come down. What's the occasion? I'm dating some girls from work. Don't worry, she said sarcastically. They pay for everything. From the very beginning, something seemed untrue to me. I immediately had a bad feeling about it. As far as I knew, Lori had never cheated on me, but you don't wear the prettiest dress in your closet to date girls. Besides, my wife was a proud woman. I couldn't imagine her going out and letting her friends pay for everything. It would be like a charity. Only if she was dating a guy would she let someone pay for the whole night. I felt the hair stand on end on the back of my neck. Yeah, and who are these girls? What are their names? She didn't even look bothered by my question. Just a few girls from the office, you don't know any of them. You haven't answered my question, Lori. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. You don't dress up to date your girlfriends. Who are you dating? Are you on a date with a man? Oh, don't be silly, she said lightly. I told you that I'm dating girls. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. You're just being paranoid because you have a guilty conscience. At that moment, I heard a car horn. I looked out and saw a taxi in our driveway. Are you taking a taxi? Yes, but today I'm going to have fun. God knows we can't afford drunk driving, so I thought it would be wise. I suppose the girls are paying for it too, I said angrily. To tell the truth, yes it is. She leaned over and gave me a quick peck on the cheek. I have some leftovers in the fridge from last night. You can heat them up in the microwave. I might be late, so don't worry about waiting. And with those parting words, she walked out the door. I was looking to see if anyone else was in the car, but from what I saw when she slid into the back seat, she was alone. I fell into denial for a while. Of course, I knew that Lori was angry, but I just couldn't believe that my wife was actually dating another man. Damn it, we had a son together, a life together. She won't cheat on me, I told myself. There just wasn't any way. I took the leftovers out of the fridge and put them in the microwave, but since my food was warming up, so was I. I wanted so much to believe that she was just having a good time with her friends from work, but come on. I went to the computer and found the number of the taxi service. When the dispatcher answered the call, I told him that I needed the address of a taxi that had just left my house, and then gave him my address. I wasn't sure what privacy issues they would have, but the guy on the other end of the line had no problem giving me the information. Plato's house, 3560 Elmhurst Road. I knew this place. Actually, Lori and I went there a couple of times. It was a romantic restaurant with an attached bar, which had many dimly lit corners. Not a place where a woman goes to have fun with her girlfriends. More like where a guy takes a woman to seduce her. By the time the bell rang, meaning that my dinner was ready, I had a knot the size of a ball in my stomach. I thought husbands and wives should stick together when things go wrong, not betray each other. Damn it, I thought. Maybe I'll go to Plato's for dinner myself. The establishment had two entrances, one for the living room, the other for the restaurant. If I enter through the living room, I won't have to deal with the hostess. I wasn't interested in drinking, so I walked past the bar and straight into the restaurant. A quick inspection of the place showed that my wife was sitting at a table with another man. She was sitting with her back to me, but there was no doubt that it was her. The two of them were talking over a plate of snacks, and a bottle of wine was already standing next to the table. I could feel my blood boiling. I stared at the bastard who was trying to sleep with my wife and started approaching with an aggressive step. I was still a few feet away from him when Mr. Slick must have sensed something. He stopped in mid-sentence and looked up. Our eyes met, and he suddenly became nervous. I was only a couple of feet away from her when Lori looked over her shoulder to see what her lover was looking at. "Skylar! Stop it!" she screamed. "What are you doing here?" "I've come to meet your girlfriends," I said tartly. "Who is this?" "Hi," he said, starting to get up. "Come on, give me a reason," I threatened. "You know perfectly well that she's married. I guess it doesn't mean anything to you, does it? Tell me, do you leave a trail of slime behind you when you crawl?" He looked like he didn't know what to do. He was still half standing, half sitting when my wife intervened. "Skylar, please don't make a scene. This is Jerry. I'm working with him. Since you're too stingy to ask me out," he volunteered. He was just trying to be nice. "Great," I growled. "He's just trying to get up your skirt." I looked at Jerry again. He probably decided he didn't want to interrogate me because he sat down again. "If you try to do anything to my wife again, help me. I'll drag you across town on a rope tied to the bumper of my car." "Come on, your evening is over," I said to my wife. She hesitated for only a second, but like Jerry, decided not to test me anymore. "I'm sorry," she said to Mr. Cool, standing up. I think all eyes in this place were on us when I took her by the hand and led her out the front door. Neither of us said a word in the car. As soon as we entered the house, however, everything was different. "What the hell was that all about, Lori? Tell me. Have you suddenly decided that I am no longer worthy to be your husband?" "No, of course not. I just wanted to get out of the house and have some fun for a change." "Who is this, Jerry? How long have you guys been dating?" I asked, getting more and more angry by the minute. "He's just a man I work with, and we haven't met. We had lunch together a couple of times, that's all." I mentioned that we weren't dating like we used to and told him that I missed it. He offered to take me out to dinner and dance, and I agreed. "Well, shoot me," she said mockingly. "I don't believe it," I said, almost shocked. "I thought our marriage was stronger than this one. We're having a hard time right now, and are you ready to leave me?" "Who said anything about bail? Now I also work every day. I deserve to have fun from time to time. If you won't take me with you, why should I refuse someone who does?" "Because you are my wife," I said, raising my voice. "That's why. We're supposed to be a damn team. She didn't say anything to that, but I could tell by the look on her face that she was mocking my words. Is this something I should be looking forward to too? Being married to someone I can't trust? Do I really have to worry about who you're with or what you're doing when you disappear from my sight? Tell me, what were your plans for the end of the night? Were you going to sleep with him? Of course not, she said sharply. I looked at the woman I had been married to for almost 20 years, and for the first time I didn't trust her. Not a bit. I don't believe you, I said. You lied to me when you said you were dating girlfriends, and it didn't even bother you that I didn't believe you then. Why should I believe you now? I admit it's been a difficult year, but a wife needs to be by her husband's side. Remember what we said to each other at the altar, richer or poorer, in sickness or in health. At that moment, my thoughts were clear as a bell. Our marriage is over, I said. This time, her mockery was verbal. Don't be silly, she said dismissively. We're broke, don't forget. You can't afford a lawyer. How are you going to get a divorce? Damn it, you can't even afford to move out. I would have liked to come back with a smart answer, but to tell the truth, I was too stunned. I think some people just don't know how to handle difficulties. She obviously stopped loving me, and she stopped respecting me. 19 years later, my marriage broke up just as quickly. I probably would have broken down and cried, but I was so damn angry. Without saying another word, I went upstairs and started packing my suitcase. Lori waited a good 10 minutes before coming over to see what I was doing. What is it? What is it? She asked sharply. Oh, I know you can't invite me to dinner, but you can afford to stay the night at a motel. Great, she shouted, turned around and left. Enright Automotive has contracted for most of their inventory to be manufactured abroad, but we made some of the goods ourselves. We had a small factory adjacent to the offices. It had a large shower room so that workers could tidy themselves up before going home, and there was a sofa in the reception area of the office building. A shower and a place to sleep were all I needed at the moment. When I went downstairs with my suitcase, Lori was in the kitchen. She screamed when she heard the door open, but I never stopped to hear what she wanted to say. I threw my clothes in the car and drove away. I hadn't walked a mile down the street when my phone rang. Sitting in the car with my seatbelt fastened, I couldn't get to him even if I wanted to, so I switched him to voicemail. It only took me a few seconds to get interested in what she wanted to say. When I got to the office, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I was thinking all the way there. I thought I'd hear a crying Lori apologizing and begging me to come back, but instead, Skylar, you're acting like a child. I told you I wasn't going to sleep with Jerry, and I wasn't kidding. Now get your ass home. Not exactly what I expected. I left everything in the car except a few basic necessities. There's no point in telling everyone at work what's going on. It was still early, so I went to the break room and watched some TV to try to distract myself from my problems, but it didn't work. I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the restaurant. Would she really have come home after dancing a little? I guess I'll never know for sure, but I had my doubts. Even if she did, that slug, Jerry, didn't look like someone who would give up so easily. I'm sure he would have put her to bed sometime in the future. In the end, I gave up trying to watch anything and set the alarm early enough to take a shower and get dressed in the morning before the factory guys start coming at 7. Trying to get some sleep, I wondered what I should do. Lori was right. I didn't have money for a lawyer, or even an apartment. I need to come up with something. Lori showed contempt for our marriage and for me personally. There's no way I'm crawling home with my tail between my legs. In fact, I was a little surprised when the alarm clock woke me up the next morning. I couldn't believe I slept so well on this couch. This thing was a torture device. I showered and dressed before heading over to Danny's for a leisurely breakfast. I'll spend some time there until it's time to go to work. I was sipping my 4th cup of coffee when the solution to my problem hit me like a flash. Of course, it was that simple. Why I hadn't thought of this before was beyond me. Back at Enright's parking lot, I took out my cell phone and took a picture. The first thing I did when I sat down at my desk was to launch an ad. 2 days later, I took the day off. I had a few errands to run. Knowing that Lori would be at work, I drove up to the house and found the papers I was looking for in our personal filing cabinet. I picked up a spare set of keys on the way out. Later that day, I checked into the motel and called Lori. As soon as she heard my voice, she started again. It's about time. Are you done with your little tantrum yet? I can't believe you couldn't find the money to invite me to dinner, but you can stay at the motel for 2 days. Actually, I interrupted her, I stayed in the office. In the office? Yes, they have a shower, a nice comfortable sofa, and a TV room, all the comforts of home, I said, lying through my teeth. She responded in kind. Well, that's just ridiculous. Stop being stubborn and come home. I'm not coming home, Lori. I told you our marriage broke up. I just called to let you know that you need a ride home. What? Why? What happened to the car? Nothing, I replied. Your car drives 1,000 times better than mine. There was a short silence as she was undoubtedly trying to understand what I was saying. Skylar, what are you talking about? I sold my car and got $18,000 for it. This is more than enough to hire a lawyer for a divorce and a down payment for an apartment. Of course, since I'm in sales, I still need a car, so I took yours. I stopped by our house this morning and took the license for both cars and the spare keys to yours. Skylar, she screamed. You can't do this. What should I drive? Actually, since both cars are registered in my name, I can do it. I didn't withdraw anything from the accounts. All the bills have been paid for the month, so there's not much left. But if you're planning a budget, you should have enough money for food and taxi fare. If you run out of money, I'm sure Jerry will be more than happy to invite you to dinner, provided, of course, that you give him what he wants. Suddenly, she spoke with a very depressed look. Skylar, please don't do this. I never thought you'd really go this far. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dated Jerry, but I was angry. Honestly, nothing's going to happen. Lori, you lied to me, went on a date with another man behind my back, and then treated me with contempt and showed absolutely no remorse when I caught you. Admit it, Lori, you don't love or respect me. You made that clear as day by the way you talked to me last night. Skylar, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry too, Lori. We had a good run when life was easy, but when it got hard, we let each other down. He was surprised to hear sobbing on the other end of the line, but it didn't matter anymore. He continued, The house is registered in our names. This is our only decent asset, so we need to sell it as soon as possible. He heard her gasp. Sell the house? Skylar, do we have to do this? Lori, we're aware of the mortgage now, but I'm not paying for the house anymore, and you won't be able to pay the installments every month. Yes, it should be sold immediately. I believe that each of us will be able to get away with $50,000 or $60,000. You can buy yourself a decent used car and find yourself an apartment. Skylar, I don't want a divorce. Can we please talk about this? I'm sorry, Lori, it's not about what you want anymore. So, do you want to call the realtor or should I do it? Lori was standing on the sidewalk in front of her apartment and looking up at the gray sky when she heard a flock of geese screaming northward, a welcome reminder that spring was just around the corner. She made her way through the melting slush to her 10-year-old Honda and headed to Starbucks to meet an old friend. She was looking forward to meeting Julia. It was a typical Chicago winter with cold temperatures, lots of snow and slippery roads, so Lori spent most of her time locked up in her apartment when she wasn't at work. Julie had already taken a small table in the corner and was sipping a latte when Lori came in. They greeted each other with a girly kiss on the cheek before Lori got in line for her Colombian brew. Standing in line, Lori thought what a pleasure it would be to go out and visit a friend. When she returned to the table with coffee in hand, she was greeted with a warm smile and a friendly voice. Lori, I'm so glad to see you. It was a long time ago. Yes, it's been too long, she replied with a hint of sadness in her voice. I rarely leave the house now. How did it happen? When we were younger, you were a party girl. Yes. Well, life was a lot easier in those days. I don't have the money to go to parties anymore. What about dating? You remember them. You date some handsome man and he pays, Julie joked. Lori feigned a light laugh. It's a kind of trick 22. You can't date men if you don't go out, and you can't afford to date if you're not with a man. What about the guys at work? Julie asked. Nobody but weaklings and married men, Lori said. Let's leave this topic. It's depressing. How are the kids? Oh, they're doing great. Charlie Jr. has just been promoted at work, and Debbie is already in her 3rd year of college. They're growing so fast, aren't they? Of course, Lori replied. Lance has 1 more year left on his contract, and he is already talking about re-enlistment. He likes it. How's hubby? Charlie's fine. He's working as hard as ever. Lori caught a shy look on her friend's face. What? Oh, nothing, Julia replied even more shyly. Come on, spit it out. You were going to ask me something. Well, I just wanted to ask if you've seen Skylar. No, not since we signed the divorce papers. She thought for a moment. My God, that was already 2 years ago. Why are you asking? I just thought I'm not sure what I should tell you, but it's probably better to hear it from a friend. What? Is he all right? Yes, he's fine. I ran into him the other day and we talked. He, uh, is he Julie? Come on, come clean. All right. He's getting married again. Even though she knew it was over a long time ago, Lori still had a hard time accepting this news. She felt her eyes start to water instantly. Her voice was dripping with sadness. It doesn't surprise me, she said softly. He's a great guy. Her eyes dropped as she confessed. Sometimes I think back to what we had together and wonder how I could have been so stupid. She took a sip of coffee, then lifted her face and looked at her friend. You know, I really loved him. I really loved him. It just got so bad with all the bills and everything that I started feeling sorry for myself. At that time, all I could think about was getting away from all our problems and having some fun. Julia didn't say anything. She thought it was better to just listen. Skylar was right, in everything. I really lost respect for him. Maybe I even stopped loving him for a while. Stupid, I know. It's not his fault that he was fired. He did everything he could to make sure we didn't lose everything. But I couldn't see beyond my own selfish desires. I just needed everything to be my way. I remember once Skylar suggested going to the zoo for the weekend, but I wanted to spend the night in the city, so I shut him up cold. Hell, he was even right about Jerry. It was the guy he caught me having dinner with. Oh, Lori. Yes, I know. Trust me, Julie. If I could do it again, I would do it very differently. Does he still live in that little apartment he got? Oh no, he left there a long time ago. I don't think you've heard. Julie hesitated to bring it up again. What now? Don't tell me he won the lottery. No, nothing like that. But he got his old job from Wang. It was some time ago, a few months after your divorce was final. I think they started losing customers left and right after they fired Skylar. Finally, they called and asked him to come back. After some negotiations, he accepted their offer. Damn it, he's making more money now than ever. When she finished speaking, Julie saw a tear roll down Lori's cheek. I'm sorry, dear. I shouldn't have said anything. No, she replied, shaking her head. It's nobody's fault but mine, she said. I can't tell you how many nights I went to bed and thought about him. I prayed that the last 2 years would just be a terrible nightmare, and I would wake up the next morning with Skylar lying next to me. But then I wake up and face reality again. Lori took a napkin and wiped away her tears. I'm happy for him, honestly. Tell him this from me if you see him again. I will, dear, Julia replied sympathetically. The girls changed the subject and started talking about a lot of other things. When they finally broke up, Lori pretended that everything was fine, but as soon as she got into the car and was out of sight, she couldn't stand it and started crying.